It is 10 a.m. Called meeting to order. And we'll do a roll call, please.
Yes, I can do that, Amber. Okay. Lee Warren.
Here.
Mike Morgan.
I am here.
Randy Bayer. Yes, I thought I saw him. Teresa Benavides. No. Okay. Bruce Carpenter.
Here.
Brian Carroll.
Here.
Stephanie Cochran.
I'm here.
Edward Muth.
Here.
And Edward, you go by Ed, is that right?
Ed. Yeah, Ed's
Ed,
fine.
okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Rondalyn Riley.
Here.
Okay. And then we have got, I see Commissioner Lerner is here. She's one of the liaisons. That's it. So you've got everyone but one. So you've got one. I don't think we've heard from her.
Okay. Well, if we haven't
Oh,
heard
wait.
from her, sorry, go ahead.
Well, she did actually, I take that back. She did just send an email, so she may be trying to get on.
Okay. Well, we're in no rush. Let's see if we can give her a couple minutes. See if
That's
she can
fine.
get on.
I'm gonna actually.
You want to try calling her real quick?
Yeah, I'm gonna jump off just for a second and try and get her, okay?
Okay. Apologize, everybody, for a short delay. We just want to make sure we can try and get everybody on here if we can.
Okay, looks like there she is.
All right. Welcome, Terry. All right. So we have everybody. Next item, Vanessa, housekeeping.
Yes. I just gave you an example of poor housekeeping. Okay, so everybody, let's go ahead and mute. I know I'm getting feedback from somewhere. Okay, perfect. So welcome everybody to the first meeting of the year, and this is exciting. It's all virtual because of the weather. It's like a real flashback. So importantly with virtual meetings, a few things. If you are an inspector committee member, we do ask that you have your camera on. And if you are not and you're not speaking, if you can turn your camera off, that's helpful. You don't have to, but it can be helpful just because the screen starts to fill up, or maybe at this point you can put it in large gathering mode. So importantly on these, if you can remain muted unless you're actively speaking, it helps significantly, which I think we've already seen. It's just like inevitably the neighbor's doing their lawn or whatever happens, and it picks it up. You do have, if you're a committee member, feel free to unmute at any time and speak up as you would in a normal meeting. You also have that raise hand function, which for me is at the top of my screen, but sometimes it is at the bottom of the screen. It looks like a hand. It says raise, and you can do that if you want to speak. You can just push that raise hand button. We're all looking at the screen, so it should be easier for us to notice it this time. Sometimes it's hard when it's a virtual and a in-person meeting. And then just make sure you unmute, make sure you unraise your hand after you get called on, or you'll get called on again and you'll say, oh no, that was from the last time, and it happens every meeting. So you raise hand, get called on, unmute, say your piece, and then you can mute and unraise your hand. Does that make sense to everybody? Does everybody know where that function is? Okay. And then just make sure, if we, we'll tell you if we can't hear you, but just speak up and it should work fine.
All right, thank you very much. On the raise hand item, I typically try to keep a good eye on it. And once I call on somebody, I tend to immediately lower their hand because you have that option here. So if you see that your hand was lowered and you still have something else you want to input, just re-raise it again. It'll put you back on the list up there. Also, anything that we do voting on today, instead of saying all in favor, say aye, and I have a bunch of people and I don't know who's saying aye. If everybody just does thumbs up or thumbs down for the votes, I think visually just makes that a lot easier for everybody, especially for the minutes if we need to reflect back on them later to know who actually voted for or against something. Other than that, remarks from the chair, that's about it. I'm glad to see everybody. Happy 2024. Making our way through. We have obviously a big shift in the committee, which I think can be a really, really good thing. Vanessa, when you talk about, you sent me a list of people, but I think the dates on one or two of those might be off as far as termination dates. I don't want to get into another Steve Reinhardt, have to do a couple extra years on this thing, but we can talk about that later. All right, so we'll move right into election of officers. So at the January meeting of every year, we select new officers for this committee. We select a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. Once that is complete, then we start making appointments to the two subcommittees that we have, the education subcommittee and the standards of practice subcommittee. For each position on these nominations, we'll do them one at a time, and the three positions that we have, chair, vice chair, and secretary. We will take open nominations for that said, whatever position is being announced at that time. Take the open nominations. You can nominate yourself if you choose to do so. You can nominate someone else. If there's multiple nominations, we will take a vote. If there's only one, then obviously that person will move on. The first position that we'll do is the chair. Whoever wins the chair position will take over the meeting as the 2024 chair for the remainder of the meeting and for this year. But we'll do them one at a time. So we will start with the election of officers for the chair of the Inspector Advisory Committee. Do I hear any nominations for chair of the committee?
I nominate
You can
on if he wants it. So.
All right, so there's one nomination with a lot of volunteers. I can see that. All right, any other nominations for chair? Mike, get that smile off your face. All right, so I will stand as the chair. Entertain nominations for vice chair of the Inspector Advisory Committee.
Job was really rough last year. I'll give it a go if nobody else wants it.
Nomination of Mike Morgan. Randy started to say something, but then put his hand down. I can't hear you, Randy.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Randy, even though you unmuted.
And while he's working on that, I think there's a chat function here. It might have been disabled or whatnot, but just please don't use the chat just in case we hadn't said that, because we try to keep all the minutes.
Yeah, it should be. It's turned off.
Okay, good. Still can't hear you, Randy. I think that was Randy voting Mike Morgan down. I think that's what he was doing. Randy, you want to try and hop off and hop back on, see if that might do it?
You can also call. Oh, did he jump off? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. There's the phone call one. Yep. We'll give him a second to get back on. So he didn't have another one. Is there any other nominations for vice chair? All right. Hearing none, Mr. Mike Morgan be the vice chair.
Well, what if Randy wanted to nominate himself?
Well, I'd asked if he had one. He kind of.
Okay.
And as soon as Mike stepped up, he took his hand back down. So I'm assuming he was about to nominate Mike.
Okay.
So, all right, try to give him a minute. Come back in. There he comes.
Okay, there he is.
Right
Randy?
now.
Yep. No. Okay. So Randy, this is what you should do though. On that invite, there's a telephone option, and you can use the telephone option and just I mean, we already can't hear you, but just mute all your other speakers, and you can stay on video though, but just use the telephone. It's pretty much synced up. Or just do the telephone. It's up to you.
Yeah. All right. By the way, just for clarity, Randy, you can give a thumbs up or down. Did you have another nomination for vice chair? No? Okay. All right, entertain nominations for secretary. Bueller.
You can nominate yourself.
I think Brian Carroll looked like he wanted to do it. So I will nominate Brian Carroll.
Somebody else can nominate themselves if they'd like to.
It's a tough job, Brian. All right. Any other nominations? All right, Mr. Brian Carroll, you are our secretary.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, moving forward, we do appointments to the Education Subcommittee Standards of Practice Subcommittee. So I tried to not make this just a blanket pick and choose. A lot of people tend to have a preference on what they might like to be on these subcommittees. Being that we have 9 members of the Inspector Committee, the chair of the Inspector Committee does not sit on one of the subcommittees because otherwise it would constitute a quorum. So you have 4 members on each. Ideally, so we'll have 2 inspectors on each of the subcommittees, 2 public members on them, and no, I'm sorry, it's 3 inspectors, 2 inspectors, and then 2 and 1. I had to think about that for a minute. All right, so I just wanted to go down the list, see if anybody has preferences, because I know some people have one that they may feel a little bit better about than the other. So I'm going to go right down the list and just ask if you have a preference on education or SOP. And I will start with Mr. Morgan.
Education.
Randy Bayer, give me a 1 for education, 2 for standards. 2 for standards. Miss Teresa. 1, education. Yes, education. Perfect. Mr. Carpenter. Okay, that's 10. I 1 or 2, or just unmute and tell me. Okay, education. Mr. Carroll. Stephanie.
It doesn't matter wherever you need me, Lee.
Okay, thank you so much. Ed. I almost said Edward, so Ed.
No, either or works. That's just
Okay.
fine. So
Perfect. Ms. Rhonda Lynn.
SOP, please.
Got it. All right, so we got 1, 2. All right, so we got inspector in public. So education, we'll do Mike Morgan. Mike, if you could chair that committee, please, because I know you have experience there. And Miss Teresa on education subcommittee, Bruce Carpenter on education subcommittee, and Miss Stephanie on education subcommittee. And then for the standards, we'll go Mr. Bayer, Brian Carroll, Rhonda Lynn Riley, and Ed Muth. And if Mr. Carroll, if you could chair that one, please, that would be greatly appreciated. All right, chair. So we have the notes. All right, I think I got everybody, but if I left somebody out or if you don't know which subcommittee you're on, please raise your hand, let me know. Okay, all right, so that's 4 and 4. We got those set. We will move forward to item number 11 on the agenda, which is staff reports. We'll start with the executive division.
I'm sorry I haven't had enough coffee today. I was slow to get off mute. Good morning. Chelsea Buckholz here, Executive Director. I'll just give you a few updates. First, welcome to our new members. It's so nice to see some new faces, and it's an exciting time in the Inspectors Committee. So welcome. A few things going on here at TREIC, none of which are specifically related to inspectors. Well, maybe one or two. One is that we are in the process of implementing a new database system. We're working with a vendor named Acela to complete that implementation. It's about an 18-month implementation. We're about halfway through. We hope to go live with that system in the fall. It's a heavy lift for the agency and something that will be utilized by all corners of the agency and also our external users like license holders. It interfaces with our website for license holders to renew their license online, and the website and the database are very much connected. So we can expect some improvements in self-service once that system goes live. And in the meantime, our staff are doing, our regular jobs and also testing and establishing this new system. So any grace we can provide them in terms of that juggle is helpful, but I'm very proud of the effort so far and excited about what's to come. I think it will be a big shift for us. It's committee season here. Here at TREIC, we operate in a cycle that is related to commission meetings. We host a commission meeting, but before we host a commission meeting, we have advisory committee meetings that inform the agenda and the content of that commission meeting. And then after the commission meeting, we work on that implementation and kind of take a deep breath, and then we start committee season again. It's a quarterly cycle. So we're in that committee season right now. ESAC, the Education Standards Advisory Committee, met last week, as well as the Broker Lawyer Committee. Of course, today is inspectors. Tomorrow is the Broker Responsibility Advisory Committee, and then the Executive Committee of the Commission later in the week. So progress all around. We have just completed our legislative implementation for January 1st with a few changes there. Most notably is on the real estate sales agents and broker side for an opportunity for an LLC or an S Corp to be registered by the commission in order to receive a commission. So nothing for inspectors to do there, but just so you know, that's a little bit of a change. Another very small change is that I have always been the executive director for TREIC and the commissioner for the appraiser board, which gets a little bit confusing, but the law changed in that regard. So now all across the board, I'm the executive director. So that happened January 1. Again, nothing for y'all, but just so you kind of know the little moving parts around here. Tony Slagle, our deputy executive director, and Mike Malloy, our director of enforcement, will be at TREIC. Tony, remind me of the dates of that. It's coming up. Is it later this week?
Yes, it's they have a conference, an annual conference every year, and it's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And we have a table there just for outreach and provide information for. There's a lot of inspectors there. It gives us an opportunity to have face-to-face outreach.
Awesome. So they'll be there later this week. And beyond that, I'm happy to answer any questions about anything, really. But thanks for your presence, your virtual presence today. I hope none of you were, I know Lee was mid-drive yesterday when I caught him. I hope that wasn't true for anyone else. But again, I apologize for that pivot.
Any questions for Chelsea? All right, so I'll apologize because I was looking at the wrong part of the agenda and I just went and bounced on forward. So I'm sorry. I'm sure Vanessa's over there going, why'd you do that? All right, so we went to 6. I skipped number 7. Number 7, ratification of the minutes of the July 17, 2023 and October 16, 2023 meetings. So we just need to ratify those minutes for ratification. Just looking for anybody who has any modifications or adjustments that are to be submitted for those minutes. If there are any, please speak so now. Hearing none, those will stand ratified. And then Ms. Vanessa, Advisory Committee Training.
Okay. Bear with me as I push some buttons and hope that it works. So present in team. Present. Ha, look at that. It worked. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I know we've chatted a little bit, but for everyone who's new, I was not at the last meeting, and for some of you, it is a new meeting, or is your first meeting. My name is Vanessa Burgess, and I'm General Counsel for TREIC, and I have communicated with all of you, and I was hoping to meet all of you in person, but the weather had other ideas. So we've started doing this thing. We started it last year of annual advisory committee training. And don't worry, for those of you who had to do it last year, it is not exactly the same. I did change it. But it's actually a really great opportunity for to provide an overview of the commission, of the committee, of its objectives, how it's made up. And then at the end, I will ask a couple of questions just to kind of get people talking and to provide their insight on their experience with the committee, why they joined, just kind of things like that, which I think in particular, when we have as many new members as we do, helps open it up for a little bit of insight, and then even, I don't know, a little bit of get to know you conversation as well, just in that, it gets folks talking and sharing their experience, give new members a little bit of an idea of what happens at committee meetings, what their roles are, things like that. So let's get started with the first slide, which is just an overview of TREC. So the Texas Real Estate Commission, or as we call it, TREC, is the state agency that safeguards the public interest and protects consumers of real estate services through education, licensing, and enforcement. So those are our three big ones, which is education, licensing, and enforcement. The agency ensures the availability of qualified and ethical service providers, thereby facilitating economic growth and opportunity across Texas. So that's important because we are a consumer protection agency, right? That's what we do. We make sure that the folks that we issue licenses to meet the standards, the state standards to obtain that license. We educate and we provide enforcement. That's probably not how anyone views that. But we have an enforcement division for those who do not comply with our standards. And the reason for all of that is consumer protection, right? And the second part of that, though, is this thereby facilitating economic growth and opportunity across Texas. So we all know that real estate as a whole is a big industry in this state. I'm always surprised when we see other states, they do not have the same license holder count by any means. And so it's pretty neat. I mean, we all know how big real estate has been, historically in this state. I think it's up there with some of the other big players. But the way that we can ensure economic growth and opportunity across Texas is to protect the consumer, to make sure that we are educating, licensing, and enforcing the laws as it relates to this industry, which in turn allows for our practitioners out there to be doing their jobs, and for us to know that we've got the right, the qualified folks that are out there doing it, and with an eye towards that consumer protection component. And you guys play a big role in that. So the actual commission itself consists of 9 members. Those 9 members are appointed by the governor. 6 members are broker members who bring experience in the industries TREIC regulates, and they've got to have been engaged as licensed brokers in their major occupation for the 5 years preceding appointment. And then we have 3 members who represent the public and bring the public consumer perspective to the commission. So I'll note that here on this committee, we also have public members, and they do something very similar. They come not with an eye so much on what the inspector industry does. They're not experts in the industry. What they are is they are really representing the public, the consumer, those who utilize real estate services. And they have that eye. The commission itself also has that. We've got public members who can make sure that they raise their hand and say, well, but wait, how are we protecting the consumer in this instance? Or from my experience of having done X, Y, and Z, it seems like, whatever. And that's a very helpful role. On this committee, we've had some really great, and we still do, public members who are willing to chime in and give their opinion on the impact on the consumer. We also have some great inspector members who really come at this with the heart of consumer protection. But that's why you've got a public member. It's to really not be an expert on inspections or that industry. It's to provide the perspective of a member of the public, a consumer of real estate services. And so that's the same on the commission, which I think is pretty neat. So I've said this, the driving force is consumer protection. All of the policy making decisions of the commission center on concepts of consumer protection, which ultimately facilitates the economic growth and opportunity throughout the state. Okay, so TREIC utilizes advisory committees like this one very heavily, which is neat because that means that the commission, when you've got an advisory committee, depending on its makeup, you've got different perspectives and they're looking at different issues. And the commission really relies heavily on the recommendations that come out of an advisory committee. This advisory committee is a little bit unique. On the real estate side, we've got a number of advisory committees that look a little bit more narrowly at things. So like, for example, Broker Lawyer Committee looks at the TREIC contract form. ESAC looks at the education and standards. So like a little bit more narrow in their focus. This group for inspectors covers it all. So you as committee members have a really big impact on the inspector industry and also on the consumer because you're looking at things like education. You're staying current with issues as it relates to enforcement. The SOPs, I mean, the work you do on SOPs and education is huge. And so you as members on this committee are really making a difference in the inspector community. So just want you to know that this group, you take on a lot and your recommendations, and we'll walk through how most recommendations get to the commission at the end. But this group puts out a lot of recommendations. There's a lot of conversation. No one in this group so far in my 4 years of being here has been shy, which is great because there's some really good conversations. And sometimes those conversations start at one point of we should definitely do this and they end with we should never do that, or vice versa, right? Which is neat because you guys really walk through all of the different layers. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we do that through the rulemaking process in just a few minutes. Okay, so inspector committee is actually established by statute. It's under 1102 of the Texas Occupations Code, which is what I call the inspector statute. And so you actually have a statutory charge of recommending rules for licensing inspectors, including rules relating to education and experience requirements, qualifying examinations, CE, which is continuing education, and granting or denying a license application, reasonable fees, SOPs, and professional conduct ethics. So really everything there is to do with being an inspector in the state. Okay, so what does this group look like? We've got 6 members who have been engaged in the practice of real estate inspection for at least 5 years prior to appointment and who are actively engaged in that practice. and 3 members of the public who represent the interests of the general public and who are not registered, certified, or licensed by an occupational regulatory agency in the real estate industry. And that's important. We just walked through the role of the public member, but we've also got members who are engaged in the practice of inspection and also who've been doing it for a while, right? Who can provide really good perspective on what's out there and what they're seeing. Okay, so that is the committee. I'm going to just cover a couple of things that are important as you serve on this committee, especially in your meetings, but also don't forget you are a member of this committee in this virtual room, usually in an actual room, but also outside of the out in the public, you represent this committee, and what you say and do matters. And people take it seriously. So one of the things I always like to advise on, particularly in meetings, but also just in conversations, is that, speaking in favor or against certain companies or business practices, that can actually cause some issues in that, if it can result in perceived favoritism. So if you're always speaking really highly about, XYZ home inspectors and how they're so great and they do everything right, and there's never been anyone better in the whole industry and they're way better than inspection company Z. So there you're getting perceived favoritism as it relates to one specific company. And that might seem like a good thing, right? But it can also be a bad thing because it can mean that there are folks who think, oh, well, they just love Inspector ABC. They just love that group and they'll give them whatever they want. They don't, there's no enforcement. So it can build up where it seems like, they want to help them out. The inspector committee really likes them. And the converse of that is also saying something negative against a specific inspector or inspector company or a business practice. So, oh my gosh, the way that X, Y, and Z has set up, it's just like they're not even doing inspections. It's all fake. They're just trying to get as many people as they can and make money. Those conversations really can't happen in these meetings because we don't comment as to business models or practices. And if you're routinely speaking out against one company or a number of companies or individuals, then you've stated an opinion. And you don't, the work of this committee is really above that. It's above a personal opinion. It's about consumer protection. That doesn't mean you can't talk about issues in the industry. There's just a way of talking about them at a higher level. So not naming specific companies, right? Talking about general practices that, might be important, but the question that really ends up coming up is, okay, is this a consumer protection issue? Or do we have something where there's a violation of the act? Is this really something that, instead of having the conversation in this meeting, should be a complaint that's filed? So I just really always want you to think about that. It doesn't mean you can't talk about big issues in the industry, things that are happening, but the way in which you talk about it, people are watching. Like you can see in this meeting, we've got folks from the industry in this meeting. And so we put this on the website. You want to make sure that you're representing this committee well. And I think these are some of the tips. Also, legal issues, if you're sort of, going for or against a certain person, you can end up in a, I'm not going to say in hot water, but you can end up accidentally being a part of a case based on something that you said, or being called out for something that's said. And unfortunately, I can't be your lawyer in that instance. So you're a little bit on your own. But I just want to warn you guys about that. This group is so good. I don't think it happens hardly ever, but just as a reminder on that. And you can always use sort of fake names like I did. Or you can just use Lee as your example, right? He loves it. But I will say one thing about you know, this group in general, going back to this, you guys do a good job of this. This is a truly engaged industry, and I love it. You guys get a lot done, and you have opinions. I love seeing all the folks who are on this call. We get pretty good attendance in person too, so I would thank everybody for that. I really appreciate that. Okay, so one of the other things that we talk about a lot is the governor's letter from 2019, which directs licensing agencies to reduce barriers to entry. If you have not read that letter, I think we included it in our materials. If not, we can send it out again. That is a great letter to go and take a look at. And people make fun of me because I have it on my desktop, but I do, because sometimes I want to go back and remember what was said in it. So the governor sent a letter to occupational licensing agencies in 2019, directing them to reduce barriers to entry. And some of the things that were touched upon in that letter specifically had to do with criminal history, getting those who have criminal history but are meeting the requirements licensed. It talks about probationary licenses, using that as a tool, which TREIC has done. And also just overall reducing unnecessary barriers to entry, right? Because this is a state that really values individuals being able to work, and if they meet the requirements of a license, getting them licensed, but still with that eye towards consumer protection. So there's a whole process in place as it relates to licensing folks. I know that letter really touches a lot on criminal history, but that's important. I think it's also important to note, generally speaking, this idea of not raising the requirements. Now, that doesn't mean you can never raise the requirements to do something. In fact, you know, I think we're even talking about that apprentice, the apprentice license and the education hours. We're going to talk about that a little bit later today. It doesn't mean that those ideas can't be tossed around. If TREC has the authority to do things, you know, there's certain, we'll talk about some of it, but there's certain authority that we have to tinker, as I say, requirements. That's okay. It just has to be done in such a way that, you know, we've got data supporting it. We know what we're doing. You know, if you want to increase requirements, why? How is that helping? Where's the authority to do so? So we have conversations about this all the time. So reading that letter, I think is super helpful. And like I said, I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to it, and I read it frequently, but it comes up a lot. And then second is this, well, you'll hear us talk about the Regulatory Compliance Division of the Governor's Office. So this is, I'll back up a little bit and say that this group often recommends rule changes. I'm going to get into statutory restraints and rulemaking in just a second. But this group, when it makes recommendations, more often than not, they're tied to a rule change. And if there's a rule change that is going to affect, they call marketplace competition. So if it's going to do something that might make it harder for those trying to get into the industry or to remain in the industry, the Regulatory Compliance Division of the Governor's Office gets involved. And so if we've got a rule that we think could potentially affect marketplace competition, that's going to go out for proposal, we're going to notify the Regulatory Compliance Division. The Regulatory Compliance Division also keeps track of all the rules that are going out by occupational licensing agencies, and will actually ask us about rules, because sometimes they'll say, hey, this may actually implicate the marketplace in a way that we weren't thinking of. Or they'll just ask questions of like, hey, this might, can you give us the data? I mean, we've had those questions. Can you give us the data behind what you're doing and what the impact is going to be and why you're doing it, which is why I always say you've got to have data to back up a rule change. So to the extent the Regulatory Compliance Division is involved, we cannot pass a rule once they're involved unless they have signed off on it. And all of this really stems back from a case out of North Carolina where you had a dental board that consisted of dentists who did not like, I'm really shortening the summary of this case, but there was teeth whitening kiosks at the mall, that board of dentists didn't like them, but not because there were consumer protection issues. It was because they didn't like the business that was going that way versus through the dentists. That was ultimately what the case said. This is not just my opinion. And so the thought behind this and what was said in this case is that when you have boards or commissions that have the licensees, if you will, the license holders serving, that when when they pass rules that implicate marketplace competition, having this layer, this regulatory compliance division is how we've put it in the state, a layer of supervision over that to make sure that they're not, just trying to help out themselves as an industry versus the consumer protection side of it. You need something like this in place, which is actually really helpful and protects us from a legal standpoint. You'll just hear me talking about it. You'll hear me say, hey, wait a second, this one may need to go to regulatory compliance. All the education rules, when they were overhauled, they went through. I think we were one of their first. And that was a lengthy process. I think I came in towards the last quarter of that, but there had already been a lot of back and forth. Okay, and so you'll hear me mention it, and I'll walk back through it every time it comes up. It's just a high level view. We also always want to be mindful in this group about statutory restraints and rulemaking. So just real quick, the 1102, which I mentioned earlier, the occupations code, that's the inspector statute. That is where all of the general authority for TREIC to regulate inspectors exists. It also establishes the requirements for the license. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It seems like in this, both in real estate and in inspectors, everyone kind of seems to know the statute pretty well, which I love. But that's your big statute, and it gives TREIC specific authority to do certain things, rulemaking authority. Like I said, it issues some of the licensing requirements. It gives TREIC rulemaking authority to do other things. So that's your big umbrella statute. Anytime we revise a rule or we create a new rule, we've always got to tie it back to our authority in 1102 to do that rule, to make that rule. Sometimes I think, well, we'll just generally say 1102 for this. And so then that's the big statute, right? That's your sort of your umbrella. The main work of this group ends up being through rulemaking. And so I always try and think of a way to say this that is helpful and not too complicated. But essentially, a rule is something that TREIC puts into place. It has the same effect on our license holders as a law, right? But what it is it's instead of the legislature making those bigger laws, it's allowing the agency that regulates the group and that knows the group that they regulate to pass rules that end up serving as more of the specific laws that apply to you. So I tend to think for you, you're probably more looking at the rules than you are the bigger statute. And we look at both, but in your day-to-day practice. And some of those rules are things that are, this is how we conduct our hearings specifically, or this is how we calculate experience for whatever, for whichever license type, things like that. Here's what you need to do to become an education provider. So the specifics are in there. It has the same effect as law, like I said, on you all, on the license holders, but importantly, there's a rulemaking process, and you all are 100% engaged in that rulemaking process. So let's say you decide, hey, we now need to, I'm just going to make something up. We need to require inspectors to always have a hammer. I know this is like the worst example, a hammer every time they do an inspection, right? So it'll be a new rule. So if this group is like, yes, that's such a good idea. You always need a hammer. Like there's never a case, and it's really like that's going to help the consumer because they're going to show up, they're going to have that hammer, they're going to, do the thing. And so you all would say, okay, we're going to draft this new rule. We've drafted the new rule. The lawyers have brought language and we love it. So we're going to vote as a committee to recommend this rule change. So you vote in a meeting like this. You look at the language. You're like, love it. Let's do it. And then at the following commission meeting, what will happen is Abby and I will present that rule to the full commission, and we'll walk through, you know, the committee met, they determined that this is really important, and they recommend that this rule go out for proposal. And if the commission votes yes, then what we will do is Amber will post it to the Texas Register, which is the official spot for notice of rulemaking. We will also post it on the website, and we will push out a lot of articles. Lee will probably write something about it in his part of the Inspector Insight. It'll be a whole thing. There'll be a whole communication, social media. Please provide your public comment. And guess what? Everyone will provide public comment because, like I said, this is a really engaged industry. So TREIC will receive public comment, which consists of people's thoughts like, no, this is a terrible idea. Why would you require them to have a hammer? That doesn't make any sense. Or, you know what, they should have to have a hammer and a screwdriver and, you know, a hat. I don't know, whatever it is, right? Again, this is a silly example, but what will happen is that comment period is open for about 30 days and then it will close. And at your next meeting, which will be in between, this group will sit down and you will go over every single public comment received. And you will talk it through and you will say, you know what, it does make sense. They should have to have a hat. Or no, you know what, that doesn't actually, like, I see what they're saying, but no, in this instance, what we're really trying to do here is X, Y, and Z. And then the committee will vote to either recommend that the rule go forward for adoption, or they'll take it back, they'll rework it. That's happened before. But let's say everyone votes and says, yes, we still love the rule. At the next commission meeting, we will present it, the attorneys, and we'll say the inspector committee recommends adoption of this rule, and if the full commission votes to adopt it, then it becomes a rule, and then everyone has to have a hammer every time they go to an inspection. We'll communicate all of that, but that's essentially the rulemaking process. It's a real high level version of it, and you can always ask us questions about it. But that's, I think, a lot of the work of this group. You end up in all these groups, you end up seeing rule changes. You know, those SOPs go out for review, they're tied to a rule, just things like that. So I think it's important to have a little bit of an overview of that rulemaking process and what it looks like. Don't worry, this is almost over, guys. But I really hope that this is helpful. I know we've got new members on here, and it's always really just a helpful reminder for everyone of why we're here and what we do. So don't worry, I've already really covered the last bullet on this, but here's a question that I think we sometimes get. Why is staff here and what perspective do they bring? So I'm not here to take over your meetings, though I've been talking for a long time. But you always have Abby Lee, who's our Deputy General Counsel, and myself here, and we are here to make sure that things are running from an open meetings perspective, right? Fortunately, Lee is here. He's got a really good grasp on open meetings, and he has clearly run some meetings in his day, right? So we provide support to him. We make sure that we get that agenda drafted, the one that's posted. We make sure it's posted. Lee gives us approval, or the chair gives us approval. We make sure we get it posted timely. We make sure all the proper notices are out there. We can also provide perspective in terms of, we just talked about rule language. Often, we'll say, hey, actually, we probably need to phrase it this way, or have you thought about this? Or there's actually, someone will say, well, what if we just say this? And then we'll be like, well, there's actually a statute that says that we can't do that. But we're not here to hinder. We're here to help provide you with, sort of the boundaries that are in the law, make sure the meetings are being run appropriately. You can ask us questions at any time. Always present, maybe not always present, but often present are the folks I think of. So we've got Denise Sample, who's Director of Licensing. So she's the one that makes sure all those licenses are going out, and she can answer questions. I think probably the strengths that we see from her really fall into like the real world application of how our licensing systems work and what can and cannot be done, or how we currently collect information. So if you ever have a question on something like, hey, could we now just send in all of our, I don't know, X, Y, and Z, and that's just where it would be kept. And she'd be like, well, that wouldn't actually work because our system doesn't, it doesn't actually tie to this or that. And those relationships don't work the way that, you might intuitively think they do, things like that. She's always saying things as it relates to our database. And then I'd be like, okay, well, what if we did this? And then she will also explain, well, that would work for this, or it wouldn't work for this. But she's often pretty good at coming up with solutions too on how some of these changes could take place, or just what it would look like if it went forward. We've got Jen Wheeler here, who's our education expert. She is she's the director of education and examination, so she can answer education questions. And then we've got Tony Slagle here, who just has a true love for inspectors. He's the staff liaison. And then typically we've got Mike Malloy and Tony Renteria, who come from the enforcement side of things. Mike's the director of enforcement, and Tony Renteria is an attorney over there, and they can provide the perspective from staff of enforcement, and again, talk to you about how it works or what they're seeing or what would this look like. And I want you to know the reason we're here is to provide that insight, right? To say, okay, you're having this conversation, what about this? Or this is how this would look. This is what we've seen. There's not a desire to impede or to, bring sort of the negative approach to it. Really, it's just, this is the other side of things. This is what it looks like at the agency. And so that, I think, is a really important perspective. We're not here to bring you down. I always say, like, I'm the fun killer of ideas, and it was the other day in ESAC, I think Jen was actually being the fun killer of an idea, and someone asked, well, okay, you've given us all the why we shouldn't do this, but you need to give us the why we shoulds, and we actually don't present that side, right? I think we can talk about things of like, oh, this, for consumer protection purposes, this could do this, but really, when you all have an idea, we are just letting you know, to the extent there are hurdles, what those hurdles are and what the reality of it would be. And we don't have a position either way unless it's a hard stop in terms of the law. But I would hate to be in a situation where Lee got up at a meeting, talked about all these great recommendations that's come out of this group, and then the next day when the full commission is workshopping it, I have to say, well, actually, it's gonna create much longer processing times from a licensing standpoint, and the system's not gonna tie into that, and this isn't gonna work, and this isn't gonna work. And Lee is like, hey, why didn't you say that in the meeting? Like, that would have been super helpful for us to know that wouldn't work, or that maybe we could have done it this other way, right? And so I always try and have like a real open line of communication with everyone in this group. But just know, even if I am the fun killer, it doesn't mean you can't go forward. Just know that, I'm letting you know my concerns up front. And that's the thought behind it. And you guys are always really great about that. All right, it's almost over. Don't worry. What happens if we disagree? Well, you're the committee. You can vote to recommend whatever you want to vote to recommend. If the committee disagrees, I think sometimes those are the greatest conversations and get us the furthest when there is a lot of discussion back and forth. Okay, so it's good to be active and to say, you know what, I don't know if I like this idea, or actually, I think we should do it this way, things like that. All right, we don't have to cover all of these, but I think this can be helpful. For anyone who's new on the committee, can you tell us why you chose to serve on the inspector committee? And I'm thinking, I know we've got a few new people, so raise your hand if you're really excited to answer this question. It's way more fun in person. Rhonda Lynn, awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. So I just decided to serve on this committee because I wanted to see how the process worked at the state level, at the commission level and committee level, and thought I might be able to add something beneficial and good to the to the whole program.
That's great. Thank you. And for someone who's a returning member, how has serving on as an advisory committee member changed your perspective on the industry, or has it?
Well, I can tell you I got on because for years and starting off, I kept seeing rules come into place and I didn't know why or what rhyme or reason was there. And I saw some problems within our industry, and I'm just not the type to sit on the sidelines and complain about it. So I just decided, well, I can either sit on the sidelines, complain about it, or I can get off my keister and do something about it. So I chose the latter.
Yeah, that's great. Randy? I'm giving Randy time to unmute or to use his phone. Okay. That's a bummer. All right, Randy, at the next meeting, we're gonna have you speak to that. I feel bad that you're muted. Okay, and then for specifically for inspector members, how do you strike the balance between consumer protection and overregulation when you approach your committee work? So how do you how do you put on the hat of a committee member, but also being mindful of your role as an inspector member and what you bring? I can see Mike Morgan, and so that is who I would call on.
Yeah, I was just preparing to unmute.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I mean, obviously our goal, our job is consumer protection, but I think anytime we talk about adding this rule or that rule, it's always in the back of my mind, how is this going to affect my job as an inspector? Is it going to make it more difficult? But I definitely try to let the consumer protection aspect hold sway, and but the fact that I and all the inspectors on the committee have been inspecting for years, I think our perspective on how it's going to affect inspectors is certainly an important aspect as we look at new rules and things, and weigh that with consumer protection.
All right, I think Randy came on phone. I apologize, Randy. I went ahead and muted you because it was giving some really bad feedback. So if you want to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Okay, I'll jump in when needed.
Oh, no, you can answer the question, Randy.
Oh, I was just saying I volunteered because I was always volunteer with the Greater Houston Builders Association and the Texas Association of Builders. I served as president of both the GHBA, the TAB, and served as a lifetime director of the National Association of Home Builders. I'm retired from home building now and been an inspector for probably 10 to 15 years, and decided to go ahead and volunteer my time on this part of the industry.
Okay, very cool. So look at that. That's some different perspective. And that I think will be great as we move forward. All right, well, that is your annual training, and I hope that I do not say much more in this meeting, but I really thank you all for taking the time and for listening and taking it seriously. Mike, you got your hand up?
Yes. So I have a real life example that reading this governor's letter reminded me of, and it brings up a question. Probably about the time this letter was written in 2019, I had a friend who was trying to become my apprentice. He was about my age, so he was really old, but he had a DUI when he was 19 years old. And because of all the paperwork and stuff that TREIC required him to obtain, he finally, after 4 or 5 months, gave up on becoming an apprentice because he couldn't find all that stuff from 40 years ago. So I'm just wondering if anything in that respect has changed since this letter came out and since this happened with this friend of mine, as far as, barriers to getting into the industry.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And it might, I mean, the specifics of that, I don't know that I could answer. And I is Mike on? I can't actually see if Mike is on. What it is there's a whole process in statute now that, well, that walks through. So if someone's got a criminal history, then we're going to walk through mitigating factors. In the example that you gave, I would imagine that if they've had this one thing when they were 19 and now they're this, unlikely, that's one of the mitigating factors is age at the time of offense. Now what you're talking about is the actual collection of the records, right? So we use the FBI Wrap Back program now, and I'm not sure if back then, I think maybe we were just starting. I don't know how that would impact the actual collection of records, but that FBI Wrap Back program gives us criminal history records in real time. So that might help.
Yeah,
But I think,
oh,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, to me, it just seemed that a DUI from almost 40 years ago,
Yeah.
if that's the only thing in their history, why does it even matter? And
Yeah,
why
and
have to collect the paperwork?
so we are required by statute to get criminal history record information, and if it is an offense that's been considered but that is considered by the commission to be directly related to the profession, which a DUI is, then there's an examination of, what happened, and then they walk through mitigating factors like age. I see Mike has his hand up and he's going to do a way better job at this than I am. But I just want you to know that, so there is a process of looking at that. It sounds to me like here you're talking about, and we don't have to get into specifics, but really it's that being able to get the records themselves was what held him back. But we've got to do the same analysis for every single person. And we've got a white paper on it that's pretty helpful. Mike, take it away. Make this better.
Well, I mean, in general, we've streamlined, especially since 2019. We had processes in place where we would exhaustively require collection of certain criminal documents. Now we don't do so much once we can just get some sort of confirmation either through the FBI or DPS database. And if it's not going to directly impact, for inspectors, actually, the laundry list of offenses that are directly related was revisited about that time. So offenses that relate to alcohol aren't on that list anymore. So it's nothing that we need to take into consideration. So, I mean, I always encourage people, there's what we call fitness determination for a person to just submit in, and they can get a yes or no answer, and we turn those around usually within 60 days. It's helpful for, some documents to be submitted on, more recent criminal history.
So it sounds like so there have been some changes made, and that might look different now than it did in 2019, which is surprisingly a long time ago, even though it doesn't feel that way. So Mike, if you have any other questions, Mike Morgan, you can feel free to reach out to Mike Malloy, or if you want to reach out to that person, I don't know if they're still interested, but I think it is helpful to note, like, there has been a lot of changes as it relates to processes related to criminal history, and so thank you for that, and we can always answer any other questions you might have.
Yeah, and I'm not going to reach out to this other person, but this wasn't so much about him, it's just about the process and helping people to be able to get into the industry more easily if something like this is in their distant past.
Yeah. Thank you. And it sounds like we've looked at that. And so, and we can continue to do so. So thank you for bringing that up. That's helpful. All right. And turn it over to Lee. I'm done.
Okay. So there will be a test on everything Vanessa just threw out at you later. So just so you know, not multiple choice, of course. Couple things I will add to that, just communication. We try to keep our meetings very open, specifically for our newer members. We try to keep our meetings very open, allowing everybody, not just committee members, to speak on any items, both in our main full committee and in our subcommittees, because I think the more stakeholder input that we have, the better. So we always try to keep that communication open. If you are an inspector member or a public member, go to inspector trade association meetings or anything like that out in the public, I would encourage you to, communicate with people as to what's going on here, what we're doing. Be very open about it. We're not hiding anything. We try to be as completely transparent as possible. I have found that going to trade association meetings, I find that there's a lot of information that comes out about this committee that is not accurate. So I think it's good to get that information and clarify what is actually being done. The people that usually talk about that information are people that have never actually been to a meeting. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you have questions anywhere along the line, if you are unsure, ask staff. Make sure you ask them, utilize. There's a ton of resources that we have. What I would encourage you to keep in mind is don't send like group emails, group texts, stuff of that nature. You can't run into a situation where we're violating the Open Meetings Act by having a multi-person conversation on there. You also don't want the perception that you are getting people in your corner on an item prior to a meeting, stuff like that. So if you have questions, if you want it to go to the whole committee, send it to Chelsea or send it to Vanessa, and then they can disperse it out to us individually, and we can address that if it's something that has to be addressed before a meeting. But just keep that in mind as far as Open Meetings Act. Just a little snapshot on the rule process, just because it's hard to kind of decipher. Anytime we have a rule that goes into place, it goes through a long process. We typically goes through our subcommittees, then our full committee, then we propose it to the commissioners. They accept or don't. Then it goes into a 3-month public comment period, comes back to us again, and then goes to the commission for approval. So it goes through a long process before anything ever gets approved. So there's a lot of people that sometimes say, oh, well, you just threw this rule in and I didn't get a chance or didn't have any, stuff on it. For instance, the SOP changes that happened in February of last year, year before. A lot of people say we threw that in there. That was a 2-year process that people all of a sudden, after it got put in place, had a couple issues with it. So speak up, always speak up. The more information we get, the better. All right. Item number 9, general comments from visitors or written comments on non-agenda items. We do have 2 written comments that came in from the public that are part of our materials. You can read through that at your discretion. I also wanted to open up if we have any public comments from any attendees here. Please raise your hand. You'll be recognized and you'll have the opportunity to speak on a non-agenda item. All right, seeing none. We'll go back to the reports from the subcommittees. I know Sean was the chair previously, one of them. And so anybody who was on education subcommittee last year, is there any items or anything you would like to report on from your subcommittees, whether it be education or standards? We'll just open it up for both. Nothing in particular? Okay. I figured we didn't have a whole lot at the end because we weren't trying to push anything through because we knew we had so many committee members that were going to be changing. So we didn't want a whole lot to change there. All right, so we'll go back to staff reports. I apologize for the redirect on that. That was my fault. We heard from Chelsea, and was that it from the executive division, or do we go? Did Tony want to speak on that as well? No? Okay. So we'll move over to enforcement division.
Good morning. My name is Tony Renteria, staff attorney for enforcement and liaison to the inspector committee. I just want to welcome all the new members. I'll try to keep my report short. This is the report of formal disciplinary action since the last inspector meeting. We do have 6 total cases, 5 a result of agreed orders, and 1 a final order that went through SOA. If you have any questions about these orders, please feel free to let me know. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And for new committee members, if those links are clickable in the materials, so you can actually click on the link itself. Enforcement has been very, very good about helping with transparency on that, to open that up. So you click on the link and it actually opens up the agreed order, which typically gives you more, a lot more information about the actual disciplinary action that's there, because sometimes the little 2 or 3 liner doesn't encompass exactly everything that was there. Mr. Carroll.
Which one of those was the one that went through SOA that was a contested case?
That's the final order, November 6, 2023.
Any other questions for enforcement? All right, we will move on. Education and Examinations Division.
Good morning, everyone. Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Exams. Super excited to see this new group of people and what 2024 is going to bring for us. Since there are so many new committee members, I'll just give you kind of an overview of what I typically provide to you in terms of the education report. The first and second pages, which are page 10 and 11 of your materials, are an overview of qualifying course applications and provider applications. The second is continuing education provider and course applications. Basically, what I do is present to you on a fiscal year to date basis, applications received and applications approved. And I don't know, I'm not sharing the materials, but
Yeah, I think we're trying to get it.
Okay.
It looks like it needs to just be moved
Okay.
down.
I'll hold.
Who is the keeper? There we
there
go.
it is.
Oh, there it went. It
Uh,
looked
it-
good briefly.
Yeah, I think Amber's working on it right now. I think she had to
Okay.
take it down and then put it up. It's the
and since they are included in your materials, you can take a look at these at your discretion. And then what I provide to you, Amber, if you want to scroll to page 12. Okay, technical difficulties. It's okay. The next page of the report that you can find in your materials is basically just a 13-month comparison of all of our application types, broken down by, qualifying provider, continuing education provider. I do break out the real estate courses versus the inspector courses. And back when we had the transition of the education, the pre-licensing education requirements, we saw a really solid influx of new qualifying courses to meet that requirement. So you won't see, since those courses are approved for a 4-year term, we probably won't see a lot of those. We did get one new inspector education provider within the last year. So we probably won't see too much more. It'll probably stay pretty solid. Overall, the next page is basically just an overall 5-year look back. Or actually ended up doing a 6-year look back this last time. Typically, I will present a 5-year look back. But you can see that on this page, and that is page 13. The next one down.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, we're trying. It's Amber, it keeps freezing on Amber.
Okay.
It's the weather.
Well, and everybody's working from home today, right? So
Yeah.
our systems are probably overloaded. But I can say just anecdotally, what we did see in fiscal year 2023 was, that was our highest volume of applications received and approved going back the last 5 years. And even I'm sure before that, but we're just tracking the 5 years. Basically, we saw about a 25% increase in continuing education course applications. That's a combination of both real estate and inspector CE courses. So we'll be watching that trend for the 2024 fiscal year. There you go. But overall, everything in education remains steady, if not on an incline. Increased opportunities and availability of courses for our license holders. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Jennifer? All right, thank you so much. Next, licensing division.
Good morning, Lee and committee members. Denise Sample for the record, Director of Licensing. And so my reports will start out on page 16 of the materials. These are the standard reports that are included and published monthly on the website. And so this will be data through November of 2023. So this first report shows licensing applications received. And if you look at the bottom left corner, you'll see the year-to-date comparison to last fiscal year of inspector initial license applications. The next page goes into the licensing renewal activity. Inspector renewals are going to be on the right-hand side on a table there. The renewals are comparing fiscal year 2022 to fiscal year 2024, which is the current fiscal year, because as you may recall, licenses are all on a 2-year renewal cycle. So that way we can compare the same license holder population. So the next page of my report that's also included in your materials is page 18. It's got the license holder counts. And so we've got a table with the inspectors kind of at the center there. We ended November with 4,731 licensed inspectors. That's across all ranks. And out of those, 4,005 were active. And that following page will be page 19. It shows a breakdown by license type in a graph form. And so the inspectors will be in yellow in the top right-hand side of that page. And I understand, we're having difficulty with the slides catching up. So I'm referencing page numbers in case you've got your own materials pulled up. And the last page of my report is page 20 of your materials. And that is going to be the license application processing time. So if you'll see in the center there, the inspectors broken down by, professional inspector, real estate inspector, and apprentice inspector. This report is where we show the average number of calendar days that it takes for the licensing staff to provide a response to an application for a license. And so this discounts any time that the applicant is spending, once they're authorized to take the exam or clearing, a background history check. This just captures the time from when documents are submitted to the licensing team for review and when a response is provided. Either you need some additional coursework or you've now satisfied the education and experience requirements, you are now cleared to take the exam. And so the goal there is 14 days, and you'll see we are, well within that metric for the different inspector application license applications. Pardon me, for the various types of inspector license applications, we're well within that metric. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Ms. Denise? Just as something of a footnote for everybody to see, if you look at the total license numbers that are there, this is kind of an indication of where our market is, and we may already have an indication of this, but that represents year to year almost a 10% drop. It's a 9.5% drop in active license holders. So just something to kind of keep in mind. Ms. Vanessa.
Yes. Those and that's right. I think those numbers are always super helpful for everyone to take a look at. Jen forgot to mention, and I'm going to read what she wrote me. Anyone who wants CE credit for attendance at this meeting should email education@trec.texas.gov with their name and license number. It's 4 hours for every 2-year renewal term if you haven't already received credit. So that's just normally we've got someone in the room for this, but this is the room. So just email education@trec.texas.gov with your name and license number.
All right. Item number 12, discussion regarding possible recommendations for the 2025 legislative session. Mr. Tony Slagle.
Yeah, hey, thank you, Lee. So part of my duties at the agency are to help be a liaison for the agency and the legislature. And one of the things this committee does is make recommendations to statutory changes to 1102. We had 2 bills in the hopper last sessions every other year. So we're talking about the 2025 session, and you may think it's too early to be talking about that, but it's really not. We had 2 bills in the hopper. One of them passed, which was to repeal the inspector recovery fund, and the other one was to get rid of the real estate inspector license type. And the reason why is it's an underutilized license type. It complicates things in a lot of ways. We're the only state that has a 3-tier licensing system where you go from apprentice to real estate inspector to professional. But in the process of talking about that bill, it became apparent that we needed to do a little tweaking. And one of those things was to add, the committee added or recommended adding an education, pre-licensing education component to that license type for apprentices. And the committee gave staff direction to do that at the last meeting. In reviewing that, I realized one of the other things we needed some feedback in particular on is how many inspections seem appropriate if we get rid of that real estate inspector license type. Because currently, to go from apprentice to real estate, you have to have 25 inspections. To go from real estate to professional, you need an additional 175. Those 175 are indirect, 25 are direct supervision. So we just need a little bit of feedback from, or maybe a lot of feedback from the committee in terms of what's an appropriate number if that license type were to go away, in terms of the number of inspections that a person would need to go from an apprentice to a professional, and do they all need to be direct or indirect? There's some discussion about that, and there may be some other legislative items that need to be discussed as well in terms of changes going into the next session. So this is just an opportunity really for the committee to determine what might be the best place for those discussions to happen on the subcommittee level, and to give some direction to staff and that subcommittee to move forward. We'd like to have something. It's always good to have some legislative language ready to start shopping around or at the latest by August. So something this summer would be great. Any questions about any of that? Sure.
Anybody have any questions for Tony? Okay. That all you got, Tony?
Yeah, so Lee, like I said, we just need to know. Yeah, thank you. That's all I have.
Whatever. Got me mid-grape eating there, sorry. All right, item number 13, discussion regarding possible topics to be discussed by the committee. Oh yeah, sorry.
So what we need is some direction from the committee as to what subcommittee that'll be going to, because we need to start those conversations, and I think the subcommittee level is probably the best place to do it, that we can bring some recommendations to the full committee at the April meeting.
Right, and that's kind of my plan for item 13.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So
I apologize.
All right, no worries. Discussion regarding possible topics to be discussed by the committee in 2024. So this, I wanted to put this in there for a couple of reasons. One, just to kind of give some direction to the subcommittees as to where we want them to kind of look at and focus on to start off the year, and also just to open up to everybody, not just committee members, but anybody. If there's stuff that you think we probably need to look at, rule changes, items like that, let's get that out on the table and look at it. It may not go the way you want, but it's always open to have it in there and have the discussion for a future agenda. We can't have the discussion today because it's not on the agenda, but we can put this on the list of things to discuss at the next meeting, or possibly give to a subcommittee. So I don't want you to think that if you come up with a suggestion and we don't have a conversation, that I'm ignoring you in any way, shape, or form. It's just we can't do it because of the Open Meetings Act. We have to be very open and transparent on everything that's there. So with that being said, I would start with what Tony was just talking about with the pre-licensing, pre-licensing for apprentice. For those that weren't here, last year, one of the things that we talked about was currently there is no education requirement for someone to become an apprentice. So we had discussed having, at the minimum, like a standards of practice course, so that any apprentice that gets a license, before they walk into a house, at least has a state approved SOP course that states exactly what an inspector's duty is to follow the standards of practice that we have to do on every inspection. Because as all of us know, every inspector's version of the SOPs varies ever so slightly. So if we start off with something consistent that's coming from the state as far as this is what the actual standards are, not this is how I happen to do it, it at least gives that inspector starting off the right foot to start off. They may get trained poorly on the backside. That's a whole different conversation, but at least to start them off, that was the thought process. So education subcommittee, I would say that would be kind of one of the first orders of business is looking at pre-licensure as far as license requirements, education requirements for an apprentice inspector if we get rid of that real estate inspector. And Tony brings up a great point. The transition from the apprentice inspector to the professional inspector and what that would encompass. I think 200 supervised, directly supervised inspections might be a bit excessive. So it's a matter of coming up with what we think might be the right number there. So something to consider there for education is that pre-licensure process and going through all that. So that's Mike, that's on you guys' agenda, to start looking at this year. It's not to say you can't come up with other stuff, but just something specifically there. On the standards of practice, Mr. Carroll, for you guys, anybody, again, who hasn't been part of this process before, we are constantly in review of the standards of practice, and they're an ever evolving thing as technologies change and the industry changes. We're always looking at ways that may need to be updated to protect consumers best and to follow along with the industry. So we start a new review of the standards of practice every so often. We didn't do it in the latter part of last year because we didn't want to start the process and have all new people start and it get confusing. So we're going ahead and start the process of review of the SOP now this year. Again, for anybody who hasn't been a part of this before, this is a long process. I don't want to give a specific directive on what parts of the standards that I want reviewed. Whatever, I will leave that up to committee and what you all feel. Take suggestions from yourselves and the stakeholder and public comments that you guys may get to really look at anything that might need to be changed. And that could be anything from big changes to little verbiage, non-substantive changes that, clean up stuff, those types of things, because the more we clean those up, the better. All right, so with that, I will open it up for anybody else to recommend possible topics for items to be discussed by the committee for this upcoming year. Oh, wow. That was way too easy. All right. So we will, that's the direction for the two subcommittees. So just kind of keep that in mind. Again, you don't have to just look at that. If there's other items that come up, please feel free to discuss those amongst your committee and bring that back to the full committee as well. It's always wanted. All right. Request for future meeting agenda items. So the subcommittees will certainly be on that list. Is there any item that somebody specifically wants on a future agenda? Anything that staff has that they want to put out there for future agenda? Nope. You guys are making this easy. Vanessa, I think you just wiped them all out today.
I know. You're welcome, Lee.
All right. So with that, we will look at discussion possible action regarding future meeting dates. The two current dates that we have planned are Monday, April 15th for the next meeting and Monday, July 15th for the subsequent quarterly meeting after that. Are those two dates okay with everybody? Is there any conflicts that people might have that we might want to look at one of the alternate dates? Monday, April 15th is tax day. Just as a little footnote, but hopefully most of us will be done and not running to the post office on that Monday at 11:59. So is everybody okay with, let's start with Monday, April 15th. If I can get a show of thumbs up on if everybody's okay with that. Okay, I don't see any thumbs down. All right, so we'll go with the Monday, April 15th at 10 a.m. And what about July 15th? Everybody okay with that date as well? Mr. Bryan.
I may have to call in. I'll be backpacking the 2 weeks prior to that in the mountains of New Mexico with my son at Philmont. So I may be calling in, but I'll be here on the 15th. I just wanted that out so I'm not on the video and everybody knows why.
Okay. So if you're falling off a cliff, we'll know what happened. Okay. All right. So Randy, I saw you checking your calendar. Was the 15th of July okay? Still can't hear you. Yeah. Okay. All right. With that, chairs of the subcommittees, please get with your committee members and discuss some possible meetings. Ideally, if you guys meet at least once, if not, you can certainly meet more than that, but see if we can start getting that ball rolling and get everybody going.
And we can help coordinate that too. So you can reach out to us. I say we. Amber does that, and she does an excellent job of getting everybody's schedules set.
So you just volunteered, Amber. That's perfect. That's great.
I know.
All right. With that, thank you, everybody. I apologize for the last minute deal with doing this online versus in person, but at least we know everybody's safe this way and no car issues and stuff like that. So, but I will look forward to seeing everybody in person in Austin on Monday, April 15th. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting at 11:29 a.m.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Shannon, I wrote you back.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.